Welcome to Turning Moments into Movements, where each week we explore simple but powerful wellbeing tips to help you live a balanced and fulfilling life. My name's Leanne Ross, your host and the founder and coach of my business, Happyluya, and I will be taking you through today's 15 minutes of insight and inspiration. Let's get started. Hello, welcome to part 2, where we talk about self-care. And this specific training will be on how you can stick to self-care. So make sure you've tuned into part 1. If you haven't already, it's all about the 5 ways to engage in regular self-care. So we talk about the physical, social, mental, spiritual and emotional. But this episode will be all about how to actually stick to self-care. And this is something that I have struggled with. I alluded to this in part 1. It was something I really was stuck on. I would schedule self-care in very frequently throughout the whole week. But as soon as it came up, I just wouldn't do it. I would find other things to do, or things would crop up, or I would justify cancelling my self-care because I had other things to do. And what I found is when that continued, it really became of detriment to not only my well-being, but to my overall mental health as well. My ability to just stop and switch off was really hindered. And what I also found interesting was my self-worth actually became hindered as well, which is not something I initially had even considered. Flippantly saying, actually, I'll cancel that sort of scheduled in self-care, but what I will do is I'll do this instead. Doing that time and time again and not allowing myself that time to replenish and to really reset really became a habit, and it really caused me a lot of poor mental health later down the line because it was something that I continued to do for weeks and weeks and weeks. And what I find is when we don't stick to self-care, and by all means, I'm under no illusion we will cancel self-care at some points because, things do crop up. But when we regularly cancel self-care and we don't stick to it, it can lead to lots of different turmoil within our lives. But what you find is when we are really scheduling in self-care, it's really helpful to have those that dedicated time structured into our daily days, into our days, and how it can also really incorporate into our week as well. So if you haven't checked out my time management one, make sure you do, because that will give you some insights around how to effectively schedule self-care as well as stick to it. So moving straight on to how can we really ensure that we are sticking to the self-care that we schedule into our daily lives. So I've got 5 different tips that I really wanted to go through. And these are tips that I have found have really helped me, but also have helped my clients as well. The first one I wanted to cover is to justify it. Sometimes we don't engage in self-care because we feel we can't justify it. We'll perhaps sit down with a cup of tea and a good book, and within a few minutes we'll be up on our feet doing housework because we feel that we can't justify it because we've got so much other things to do. We'll maybe cancel time with our friends because we feel that we've got that work report that we need to be getting done. We'll maybe cancel or not even cancel, maybe just not sign up for coaching sessions or therapy sessions because we simply feel we don't have time or capacity to engage with it. What I would like you to do is, if you grab a notepad and a pen, or even if you're driving and you don't have access to a pen and paper right this second, think of 10 reasons why you can justify your self-care. And I promise, the more you think about it, the more justification you will come up with. You will reflect on how hard you work at your job. You will reflect on how hard you work as a parent. You will reflect on how much you give to your friends, to your colleagues, how supportive you are. You will reflect on how much time it takes to run your errands every week, to do your food shop, to do your housework. I call this unpaid labour. So work that we aren't getting paid for. Think how much hours per week you do, whether it's looking after people, whether it is doing overtime at work that's maybe not recognised, whether it's doing some housework, whatever that looks like. You will have so many reasons on why you can justify scheduling in self-care and truly sticking to it as well. Another example I quite often find is people talk about their poor mental health. They'll talk about how they're really struggling physically, and they'll talk about things that are really affecting their whole life. But I still hear that they feel they can't justify that time out to really look after themselves because they've got other commitments that they feel are more important. So really reflecting on all the reasons why you feel you can justify the fact that you need self-care into your routine on a very regular basis. So the first one is justify. The second one is to recognise. So this is a little bit different. It is kind of pulling forward what I was talking about before, around really recognising the impacts that not having self-care is really truly having on your everyday life. So one example could be that you are really sore, you're in a lot of pain because you're hunched over your computer, you're driving a lot for work, you're driving a lot for your family, you're not sleeping well because you're so exhausted, you maybe haven't got round to buying that new mattress that you need because your back is so sore, you know that it needs replaced. But what you find is people will leave this, being in pain for months and months and months, not being able to justify taking some time off to go to the doctor, not taking the time to go mattress shopping, not taking the time to go and get a massage, not taking the time to actually talk to someone and say, I'm in a lot of pain and I need support. Similarly with mental health, I very often hear this. I would love to sign up with you, but I don't have the time, I don't have the capacity. And what you find is when people aren't in a position to make allowances for scheduling in things that will truly help them, they will end up in this vicious cycle. They will end up not feeling able to truly go on, because they are so impacted by all of these things that have ultimately really affected and hindered their mental health and well-being. So recognising why you need self-care and the impacts that self-care really truly will have on your life is the second reason why the second reason why you should stick to it. So really sticking to that self-care schedule that you are looking to adapt. The third one is shifting the shame, or as I say, shifting the shit. So really what I have recognised when people struggle to engage in self-care is because they have a lot of shame, they have a lot of guilt. And this really does follow into the justification and the recognising, but really wondering and being curious around why you do have shame when you are trying to schedule in self-care. Why do you experience shame? What does that look like for you? Is that shame coming from someone else? Is it because you're made to feel guilty because you're being told, why are you sitting down? You shouldn't be doing this. You should be doing this. Is it because many, many years ago when you were a child, you would relax in front of your TV and your parents told you that you were being lazy? You know, have you got an association with self-care and that is a sign of weakness? Whatever that is, really start to dive into the reasons why you feel you may have shame around sticking to self-care. And recognizing why can really help us to start to shift the shame a little bit at a time and really focus on why we are deserving of really scheduling and self-care into our everyday life. The next one is focusing on scheduling. So what does it look like when you schedule self-care into your everyday life? How do you do that? When do you focus on your self-care? And focusing on the when is really, really important as well, because what we find is quite often, people will have a list of things that they would love to do, they would love to engage in self-care, but when it reaches that point, they've actually hit Sunday night and they're like, oh, I actually don't have any time to schedule in self-care at all. So what I would really encourage you to do is on that Sunday night to start scheduling in self-care for the week ahead. And if you are in a routine, if your routine's quite predictable, you can schedule it in for the same times every week. If you work perhaps shift work, or if you are caring for people full time as your job, then that can be a little bit more ambiguous. But what I find is finding times where you are not as likely to be interrupted is really, really helpful to figure out where you can schedule in that protected time. And I promise you there will be time, even if it's for only 15 minutes. What I found was when I worked as a service manager in a big sort of organisation, I was so friggin' busy. I was on call, I was getting calls all the time. If I didn't answer my work phone, they phoned my personal. It was such a busy role. But what I found was most people in the workplace were not up at 5 a.m. every morning. I chose to dedicate that time to myself. So I got a full hour to really focus on my self-care. I did so much stuff. I would sit and watch TV with a blanket. I would do some cooking because I really enjoy cooking. I would listen to podcasts. I would maybe go out for a walk in the summer when it was a little bit lighter. I'd sometimes go to the gym. I'd listen to podcasts. I literally treated it of a golden hour during my 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. stint, because it was time I knew I wouldn't be interrupted. And that time really helped me to continue within my busy lifestyle, and it really helped to enhance my overall life because I was making that commitment to myself because I was scheduling it in. So that's what I would really encourage you to do, even if it is for 15 minutes per week, to start off with and then gradually build it up. I would really recommend for you to do that. Lastly, I want you to review this whole process. So review your justifications, review what you recognise as self-care and what you recognise within your body and why you need self-care. I want you to review the shame that you're feeling, if there's been any shifts, if there's been an increase of shame. Why is that? What's that, what's brought that on? I want you to review your scheduling. I want you to review what your self-care looks like and any barriers that are causing you to not stick to your self-care. Because I promise you, as soon as you jump on this journey, you will be desperate for more time to engage in your physical well-being and really supporting yourself to physically feel the best you've ever felt. More time to be social and to spend the time with people that you truly love, that really light up your room, that bring you laughter, that bring you joy. More time to spend supporting your mental health, your mental self-care, to work on self-development, to really learn those skills that you've always wanted to but have never felt able to do. More time to engage in spirituality and really connect to your higher self. And finally, more time to engage in self-care to support your emotional health and your self-regulation as well. This will truly change so much for you, so I'm really excited to hear how everyone gets on. Make sure you take notes, re-listen to this episode if you want to kind of replenish your information and your knowledge that you've wanted to take away from this. And yeah, I can't wait to hear how everyone gets on, and I will be sure to drop in another episode as usual, same time next week. Take care, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Turning Moments into Movements. Why not check out coaching opportunities with me so you can really begin to enhance your moments into huge movements and begin to live the life you never thought possible. Details are in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, leave a review and share this episode. Remember to also follow me on social media platforms through my handle Happyluya, where you will receive additional daily content. And finally, make sure you join us next week for more tips on how you can turn your small moments into life-changing movements.